Look, I have had the absolute state of this roster on my mind all week, and now we are dealing with some gutting news. The Carolina Panthers have confirmed that linebacker Nic Scourton suffered a torn ACL in practice, which is a massive blow to our defensive depth, right, when we need stability. This loss hurts because Scourton was supposed to be a key playmaker for us this year. It really comes down to two things: the immediate impact of this injury and what it means for our defensive rotation moving forward. The deeper you look, the more to unpack. Drop a like, subscribe, and tell us your city below. Let's break it down. The Carolina Panthers received some truly difficult news out of training camp today as NFL Network reporter Cam Wolfe confirmed that linebacker Nic Scourton has suffered a torn ACL during practice. This is a devastating blow for a player who arrived in Charlotte with so much promise and was expected to be a cornerstone of our defensive front this season. Scourton had been working tirelessly to earn his spot in the rotation, and fans were genuinely excited to see how his unique skill set would translate to Dave Canales' defensive scheme after he became a vital part of our roster planning. And I cannot stress this enough, the timing of this injury could not be worse for a group that is already dealing with significant availability concerns heading into the regular season. The report from the insiders provides no ambiguity, leaving us to process the reality that his upcoming campaign is effectively finished before it even had the chance to begin. For those of us who have followed this team through the lean years, it feels like yet another hurdle placed in our path at the absolute worst possible moment. The emotional toll on the locker room is palpable, as players and staff alike understand that losing a contributor of his caliber changes the math on the entire defense. With this major void now created at linebacker, we have to look closely at the depth chart to see how David Tepper and the front office plan to adjust the roster. We are left wondering if the team will look to the current pool of unsigned free agents to plug this massive hole, or if the coaching staff is prepared to thrust inexperienced players into high-pressure roles earlier than anyone originally anticipated, a question that lingers over every snap we take this training camp. The most alarming development for our roster involves the recent report from Cam Wolfe on the Insiders, confirming that linebacker Nic Scourton has suffered a torn ACL during practice. This injury is a heartbreaking setback for a player who was expected to provide immediate depth and energy to our defensive unit as we head into the new season. This specific injury often serves as a turning point for team morale, especially when it occurs during the grind of training camp. Behind the scenes, the front office led by David Tepper and the coaching staff under Dave Canales are surely grappling with the reality of how to adjust their defensive rotation without one of their key assets. Historically, losing a playmaker this early in the cycle forces the entire organization to lean heavily on the remaining veterans to stabilize the locker room. Let's be real, the absence of Scourton puts immense pressure on our remaining linebackers to absorb his snaps while maintaining the high standard of play we expect to see on the field. We have seen similar roster shifts in the past where unexpected losses necessitated a complete tactical pivot to protect our defensive identity. Defensive tackle Derek Brown has spoken at length about how the work done in training camp is the true separating factor for a successful season. And this injury complicates our ability to build that necessary cohesion. While it is difficult to watch such a promising contributor go down, the reality of the professional game is that our depth must now rise to the occasion. We need our secondary and front seven to remain disciplined and focused despite this loss, ensuring that our defensive schemes remain intact as we approach the opening kickoff. The focus now shifts to recovery and identifying which players will step up to fill this void for the Carolina Panthers. Now that we have covered the headlines, it is time to dig deeper into the actual implications of these roster developments for our squad. Here's where it gets interesting as we look at how the Carolina Panthers are navigating a difficult training camp. With Nic Scourton confirmed to have a torn ACL and both J.C. Horn and Taylor Moton placed on the reserve NFI list, our depth is being tested before the first kickoff even happens. This matters right now because these injuries strike at the heart of our defensive front and our protection schemes during the critical early stages of camp. The immediate impact on our depth chart is undeniable, as the coaching staff must now rely on younger reserves to step into starting roles much sooner than originally anticipated. When we look at our upcoming slate of games, this lack of continuity on the offensive line and in the secondary could make early matchups against division rivals particularly taxing for our defense. Every snap in practice now serves as a high-stakes audition for players who suddenly find themselves holding the keys to our success. While defensive tackle Derek Brown emphasizes that training camp is the true separating factor for any contender, the margin for error has certainly shrunk. We are looking at a scenario where our ability to remain competitive for a playoff spot depends entirely on how quickly these replacements adjust to Dave Canales and his system. If our depth players cannot fill these voids, our standing within a competitive division will suffer, forcing the offense to carry an even larger burden than we previously expected. It is a tough start, but we have to see if the remaining core can hold the line while these essential pieces focus on their long-term recovery and eventual return to the field for our organization. The news regarding Nic Scourton and his torn ACL is a tough blow for our defensive depth, yet we must consider the long-term potential of his recovery. The primary upside here is that modern surgical techniques provide a clear path for young athletes to regain their explosive capabilities, allowing him to focus on film study and mental preparation while he heals. Think about it this way: we have invested heavily in our defensive front, and having him ready for a full return provides a secondary surge of talent when the roster needs it most late in the season. However, the downside is undeniable because losing a player of his caliber during training camp limits our defensive scheme flexibility and forces younger, less experienced depth players into high-pressure roles earlier than expected. Across the league, analysts are discussing how this injury impacts our defensive rotation, with figures like Jalen Phillips being highlighted as key players who must now shoulder a larger burden alongside veterans like Derek Brown to keep our pass rush effective. Some media outlets have suggested that the team might explore adding more unsigned free agents to bolster the unit, with names like BJ Green III mentioned in various circles as potential contributors. Here's where I land on this situation. I believe the narrative that our season is derailed by one injury is far too pessimistic, as our defensive core remains talented enough to compensate for a temporary loss. While it is a significant setback, our focus must remain on the development of our healthy starters who are currently setting the standard during these vital camp sessions. We have the leadership in place to manage this adversity, and I am confident that our coaching staff will adjust our defensive rotations to ensure we remain competitive and disciplined against every opponent we face this year. When we weigh the unfortunate injury report alongside the strategic vision laid out by our leadership, it becomes clear that this franchise is at a pivotal crossroads for the coming seasons. The news from Cam Wolfe regarding Nic Scourton and the reserve status updates for J.C. Horn and Taylor Moton certainly sting, but they highlight the crucial need for depth that Dave Canales is working hard to establish. And this is the part that gets me, as the organization demands total accountability from every player during this training camp, just as Derek Brown emphasized about the separating factor of practice. As Carolina Panthers fans, we should feel a sense of cautious optimism heading into the season because the team is prioritizing toughness and long-term development over quick fixes, even when the injury bug hits early. While the physical setbacks are frustrating, we must trust that the roster management led by the front office will keep the competitive window open for Bryce Young to finally show his potential. We are watching a deliberate culture shift where every single snap in camp is treated with the gravity of a game day, which is exactly what a rebuilding squad needs to survive a grueling NFL schedule. We must remain patient while the pieces fall into place, knowing that the foundation is being poured with durability and discipline in mind. With the season fast approaching, I want to hear your take on the current state of our roster depth. Based on the recent injury updates, do you believe the team should aggressively pursue an unsigned free agent to bolster the secondary? Or are you confident in the current personnel stepping up? If you enjoyed the video, do not forget to like it and subscribe to the channel. Keep pounding. I'll see you in the next one.